Good afternoon, Committee on Finance will come to order. First up, we have our 1:30 agenda. Thank you to testifiers and members who are here and also on Zoom. First up, it is Senate Bill 2885, Senate Draft Fund, House Draft Fund. First up, it is the judiciary.
Good afternoon, Chair Lu, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Good to see you. My name is Lisa Ginoza. I am with the Intermediate Court of Appeals, but I'm here testifying in my capacity as Chair of the Commission to Promote and Advance Civic Education, which is a commission created by the Hawaii Supreme Court last year, January. The day after the Capitol attack, just so happened, the commission was created. We are in strong support of SB 2885. The commission's goal is to promote and advance civic education. We think this bill is a great step forward in that regard, and to have somebody dedicated at the legislature to outreach with all of the schools of Hawaii will be a significant help in achieving civic education for our students and the educators who are trying to do the civic outreach and education as well. So thank you very much for hearing this bill, and we are in strong support. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being here, Judge. Any other testifiers, either on Zoom or in person? If not, questions? If not, thank you. Let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2298. First up, it is DLIR.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of Finance. We stand in their testimony and support and are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On Zoom, we have AFL-CIO. Okay, otherwise we have IATSE 665.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. We stand in our written testimony in strong support and are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions, members? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2359. We have University of Hawaii.
Hi, good afternoon. Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of committee, Nathan Murata, Dean, College of Education, University of Hawaii at Manoa. Thank you for this opportunity to testify and support, and I'm available for any kinds of questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Department of Education.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Sean Bacon, Interim Assistant Superintendent for the Office of Talent Management, testifying on behalf of Superintendent Keith Hayashi and the department. The department stands on its written testimony and support, and we thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. We have HSTA.
Aloha, Chair and members of the committee. Along with the University of Hawaii and the DOE, the HSTA strongly supports this bill. We need it for our teachers, those in service now, and our upcoming educators. We want to note that this could also be added to our Grow Our Own program, could be expanded to reach this goal, and we would highly encourage this expansion in every county. And on another note, HSTA want to bring the issue before the cost of living in Hawaii. We are finding that our teachers are finding it very hard to find rentals so that they can stay in Hawaii. So along with this, we support this bill. Aloha for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2076. First up, it is State Council on Developmental Disabilities. If not, we have DBED.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bert Lum. I'm in the Hawaii Broadband and Digital Equity Office and testifying on behalf of DBED. I stand on our written testimony and provide comments and am available for any comments or questions. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have DCCA.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Finance Committee, Kat Awakuni Kalon on behalf of DCCA. You have our written testimony offering some comments, basically supporting the suggestion that the University of Hawaii raised in their testimony to form a working group to discuss this matter in greater specificity. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up is Ocean Networks.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Thanks for the opportunity to provide testimony. Cliff Miyake on behalf of Ocean Networks. We stand on our written testimony and support and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Hawaiian Telecom.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony on this bill. We stand on our comments and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, it is Sandy Wong.
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Sorry. So good afternoon, Chair Luke. This is Sandy Wong. I'll stand on my written comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers, either in person or on Zoom?
Aloha, Chair Luke, J. Butay for DOT. We submitted our testimony, but I think the postman internet went on strike.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, we stand on our written testimony providing comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifiers? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2567. First up, it is the HHL.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita. We stand on our written testimony by submitting comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3205. First up, it is HTDC.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Len Higashi with the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We stand on our written testimony in support with comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Mackay Ocean Engineering, Inc. Okay, next up is Oceanette Labs.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Oceanette stands on our written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifier in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2806. First up, it is Len Higashi, HTDC.
Thank you, Chair. HTDC stands on our written testimony and support. Thank you very much for hearing this bill. It restores funding for core programs that we've been running. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Trevor Abrazo with the Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii. We stand on a written testimony and strong support, and thank you for hearing these bills for HTDC. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Mackay Ocean Engineering. I don't think they were here earlier, but if they're here, we'll recognize you. If not, we'll move on to Oceanette.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Oceanette stands on our written testimony and support, and strong support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Food Industry Association. Okay, any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2808. First up, it is HTDC.
Thank you, Chair. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill. This is new federal program and the money would help us to administer properly. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next up is Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on a written testimony and strong support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Gwen Yamamura with the Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority. We stand on our written testimony in strong support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Dennis Ling of DBED.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Dennis Ling with DBED. DBED stands on its written testimony in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifiers on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2805, again, HTDC.
Thank you, Chair. HTDC stands on our written testimony supporting the intent of this bill.
Thank you very much. Next up is Chamber.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our testimony with strong support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Ling.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. DBED stands in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3143. We have Department of Taxation.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Ted Shira Ishii on behalf of the Department of Taxation, and we stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tax Foundation of Hawaii, Mr. Yamachika.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We'll stand on written comments, be available for questions.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2303. We have Department of Taxation.
Thank you again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Next up is Tax Foundation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation again. We will send written comments, be available for questions.
Thank you. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2599. First up, it is HTDC.
Thank you, Chair. Len Higashi for Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We stand on our testimony and support this bill.
Thank you very much. Next up on Zoom is Department of Taxation.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments.
Thank you. Next up it is DBED.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Chung Chang, Deputy Director for DBED. We stand on our testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mackay Ocean Engineering. I don't think they were here earlier.
I'm here now. I apologize.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I stand on my written testimony in support.
Thank you very much. Next up is Oceanette.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Oceanette stands on its written testimony in strong support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Tax Foundation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We'll stand on written testimony and be available for questions.
Thank you. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3054. First up, it is Creative Industries of DBED.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Georgia Skinner for DBED. We stand in strong support of this measure and do call your attention to the two amendments that we recommended to the testimony and are here for any questions after. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. Our concern is just with the perceived scope creep of the special fund. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3201. First up, it is Department of Taxation.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments.
Thank you. Next up is Hano.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committees. Lisa Mariama with Hano, Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations. And we'll stand on our written testimony in strong support and are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Habilitat. Okay, next up is Tax Foundation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We will stand on written comments and be available for questions.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to Senate Bill 172. First up, it is National Tropical Botanical Garden. Okay, that's all the testifier who signed up either in person or on Zoom. Anyone out there willing? Yes. Mr. Dela Cruz.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the Finance Committee. Juan De La Cruz, Executive Director of the Office of Community Services. We have submitted our written testimony providing comments on this measure, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill. Senate Bill 3243, we have HTDC.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The HTDC stands on our written testimony in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifiers, either in person or on Zoom? Okay. Oh, Mr. Nakamoto, would you like to testify on 33? Oh, which one am I on? 3243. I think you're the next one, yeah?
Next one. Sure. Sorry. Next one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Any other testifier on 3243? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next one, Senate Bill 3334. First up, it is DAGS, Stadium Authority, or whichever one.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Kurt Otaguro, State Comptroller. I'm with my colleague, Ryan Andrews, the State Manager. DAGS appreciates the intent of this bill, and while we support it, we have some concerns that we submitted in our testimony. And we're here to answer any questions that you may have. But I will also add this, that we appreciate the legislature's consideration over the past many years, actually, to get the Stadium Authority the powers to build. I can assure you and all the committee members that a lot of due diligence has gone through. The team has worked hard to get to this point. We are at that point to pull a trigger and actually issue an RFP for both the stadium as well as real estate. And so while we have that, I mentioned the second part because as you consider this bill, please consider the long-term effects that we're looking at. We're not just building a stadium replacement, we're building a district. We're building something that the community will engage in that will provide a lot of benefit and new experiences, a fan experience, but we're also here to build a new community and enhance the Halava area. And so I'd like to ask my colleague to also provide that opening testimony if you may, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair and members of the committee, Ryan Andrews, Aloha Stadium. The authority really appreciates all the support the legislature has provided to facilitate this project and the development on the stadium site. With regard to site governance, the authority will defer to the testimony of the comptroller and notes that as a result of our multi-agency collaboration with both DAGS and the HCDA, proposed language has been offered that ensures we can not only leverage our existing process that is already underway with the stadium and real estate developers, but also looks ahead to ensure the state establishes broader controls over the development district regulations and requirements, especially with regard to zoning. I do want to point out one area of concern with regard to Part 3, Section 6, which is the proposed repeal of the existing exception of the departmental administrative assessment. Although it may seem like a minor detail within this bill, it will have negative financial impact on the stadium operations, whose revenue opportunities are currently limited and will further be limited once construction commences on the site. The current stadium operation and staffing have been scaled back significantly, and the repeal would require the stadium to redirect its limited operational funds to address the assessment, whereas those same funds could otherwise be used to address operating costs during property development. I would like to note that this project, as Comptroller noted, is a a long-term 20-year project that will require several years before this project reaches a level of maturation and financial stability is achieved. So as such, we respectfully ask your consideration in allowing the Stadium Authority to continue the exception from paying the administrative expense assessment during these critical years, and perhaps reassess once the authority is on a better financial position. On behalf of the authority, I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. We have anyone here from DOE? Okay, if not, DBED? Mr. Chung Chang?
Sorry, there's technical difficulties.
Okay, if not, we'll move on to Mr. Nakamoto, HCDA.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Craig Nakamoto for Hawaii Community Development Authority. We've submitted written testimony in support, and we stand on that testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Department of Transportation. Okay, if not Department of Transportation, we can go back to DBED. Mr. Chang, are you still having
Yes,
problems?
no, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I had some problems unmuting myself, but DBED stands on its written testimony supporting the intent that places the DBED director or the designee on the boards of HTA, Stadium Authority, and School Facilities Authority, and as well as transferring the Stadium Authority and the school facilities to DBED. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Tanaka, we have 3334. That's the transferring agencies to DBED.
Thank you very much, Chair Luke, Mr. Yamashita, members of the committee. Randy Tanaka, DOE. We stand by our testimony. We fully intend to work with the SFA for the better of our education system. Aloha.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here to testify either in person or on Zoom on Senate Bill 3334? If not, questions? If not, let's move. Yes, Representative Koyashi.
For DAGs and Stadium Authority, how much delay and cost would be involved if with the transfer?
The cost to transfer.
Well, I think I'm sorry. What I'm thinking of is that there will be delay, and with delay, there's always associated costs.
Thank you for asking that question. There's always that current for delay. We've already suffered, unfortunately, several delays over the last several years. But regardless of that, the nascent project team has been planning and working behind the scenes 24/7 in some cases to make this happen, to get to an RFP. So that's where the project is right now. We are very close to the legislative session for the funding and the governance of this. And so we're prepared to issue that request for proposal for the stadium as well as the real estate portion soon after. With regard to a change in from DAGs to DBED, in the bill, what we're asking for is, and while we support that change, to delay the implementation of that certain part, where DAGs would continue to, you would allow DAGs to continue with the procurement as is, so we can get to an RFP. And then at some point, my colleague at HCDA would then promulgate the necessary rules, which would take several years to get to that point for zoning. And so we're asking for a delay until July 1st, 2025 to make it effective. And that would provide the state with the maximum amounts we can leverage what we've already invested in, as well as keep the timelines going to get that request for proposal out in a few months.
So there would be no delay or slowing up if the 2025 date is used.
That is, yes, that is our recommendation, to not stop this at this point. A lot has gone into it, and the state, we believe the state is in a position to get real facts and real bids from very interested developers.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3096. First up, it's DOE.
Committee members. My name is Mahino Angwai.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, Ms. Angwai.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm the principal at Waimea High School in Kauai. Please note the other 11 organizations who've signed on to this written testimony with us in support: Kekaha Elementary, Ele'ele Elementary, Kalaheo Elementary, Koloa Elementary, King Kaumuali'i Elementary, Kilauea School, Kamehameha Schools, Kauai Community College, Education Incubator, Ivikua, and Kumano Ikeala. We stand on a written testimony, but wanted to add that we see this as an opportunity to establish a space where Waimea High School and her partners would lead the effort to restore land and people while also growing the next generation of farmers. We want to scale and grow the current working model we enjoy with our grant partners, Kauai Community College and Ivikua, and we feel that this collaborative model of resource sharing has far-reaching benefits for not only the island of Kauai, but the entire state. So mahalo for your support.
Thank you. We'll go to Zoom first. Department of Agriculture.
Aloha and good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Phyllis Shimabukuro Geyser, Department of Agriculture. We stand on our written testimony supporting the measure, and we defer to Department of Education. We're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the Farm Bureau.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the Finance Committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on a written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tanaka, AS Tanaka.
Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee. Thank you for your time today. We stand by our written testimony. Clearly, it's a tremendous opportunity, just a little bit. I've just come back from a trip in Oakland and Sacramento, looking at facilities that are highly modernized in terms of central kitchens, and what they are doing out there from a technology standpoint and from a food service standpoint is unbelievable. It's facility I saw in Sacramento was a $70 million facility, but it's highly modernized. So the workforce that's being developed is not my grandfather's workforce. This is a whole different game, and I think we need that kind of capacity development with our students and our community. So thank you very much for your support. Aloha.
Thank you. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions, Representative Peruso.
Question for AS Tanaka. So thank you for confirming that Mr. Rowe from ABC had sent me the license agreement from Bex or BASA from 2012. So that's the most recent license agreement, correct? And reading that license agreement, it says that a couple things I found interesting, that we are licensing that property, that 10-acre parcel that this emergency appropriation is meant to acquire for the DOE, that's my understanding. We're currently leasing that to Bex at $620 per acre per year. And another section of that license agreement says that subleasing is allowed, but there shall be no profit from that subleasing. So I'm curious, and then on page 9, it additionally says that improvements with respect to improvements, that ownership thereof shall be in the lessee until the expiration of this lease, and it reverts to the state. So my question is, why would the state then, so I've spoken with Kekaha Ag, and they have said that Bex was unable to find anyone to take over that parcel, that 10-acre parcel, because all of the other big players within KAA already have their own facilities. So there is no competition for that facility. So if they're unable to have someone take over the lease, then it reverts back to the state. The lease will expire. And I haven't gotten confirmation that they are current on their payments. They haven't been in the state for quite a while. So I would be curious to know if they are current on their payments, if that that license is still being paid and is up to date. And then I'm also curious about why we would pay $5 million for a parcel that we could be leasing. I mean, at the very least, we could be subleasing if Bex wanted to maintain that. We could be subleasing at $620 per acre per year, which does not add up to $5 million.
So from what I understand, and I have limited knowledge on the lease because that's an ABC and a BEX relationship. And those lease agreements for that whole ag area is really under the management of ABC. We saw an opportunity and concurred with Kekaha Ag and a number of folks there that this would be a good way to modernize and build our worker capacity, student capacity across the state. We are purchasing the building, or our intent is to purchase the building. It is, like you said, the lease, I think is like 24 or 25 years more to go. It is ABC land, and the opportunity to purchase and fully manage that facility in our eyes was a good way to build our longer term program. And that's why we appraised the value of the facility, which is a little, depends what you look at. I think it was like 6.3 or 6.4. It's now appraised with it's an enterprise factor in there, but taking that out, I think it's like 5.8 or 5.6. And that's what we framed up our intent to purchase the building. With a longer term situation, that's really Bex may keep the lease, Bex may exit the state. We had heard that there were other people interested in the building, but that didn't drive our decision. Our decision was to acquire an asset that's already stood up. If we had to build an asset like that, probably would take us 3, 4, maybe 5 years, given the expediency of our system. But that's how we come to this decision to acquire the building. I have not factored in lease agreements or longer term, or just standing and waiting till either they give up or somebody else buys it. Our intention was to really start this ed program sooner than later, and that's the sense of urgency that we have. So a kind of roundabout way of saying, we want to buy the facility because we think it's a good opportunity for the Department of Education and education in ag.
So just to clarify, Bex has already left the state. They are no longer in operation.
They had, as the last check, they still had some staff here, but not to any great extent.
Okay, so we're looking at the expiration of their lease.
Mhm.
So the appropriation that this bill calls for, that payment will be made to Bex.
Mhm.
Even
For the
though-
building.
For the building, even though in the lease, it says that any structures created on that building will revert to ownership by the state.
Yes, if they can choose to pay for the lease, which I don't think is likely. They're good business people, and we'll see. But right now, where we stand, that's the offer on the table. They have not said they're not gonna do something here. They gave up, I think, 800 acres. They were doing seed corn and some watermelon, I think. But it's kind of a waiting game between us and them. If they exit, then we have the opportunity. If they don't exit, they can sit on that lease for 24 years with whatever conditions are, and we won't get the building. They'll lock
They would
us out.
still be paying, like they would
Yeah,
still have to pay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2989. First up, it is Department of Agriculture.
Mahalo, Chair and members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony offering comments. We do have concerns, and I'd like to highlight them. There's an unknown number of additional personnel with the experience to carry out technical and education assistance to the farmers to implement this farm management practices. And there's an assemblage of complex data and information requirements necessary to identify standards and practices. We also are concerned that lands leased under our management jurisdiction need to meet minimum requirements of soil carbon and water content and are required soil health practices, whereas private land owners of agricultural land are not required to comply, but would be voluntary. There is another measure coming before the committee, SB 3325 HD1, that describes a detailed pilot program. We believe that this pilot program proposed in SB 3325 HD1 is a more comprehensive, collaborative, and a better structured vehicle to implement the Healthy Soils program. And we're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Aloha to this measure, and would like to respond to a couple of the issues that have been highlighted surrounding this bill. There are some still yet filled spaces for identifying timelines. This bill is intended to have a complex of influences on the decision-making surrounding conservation agricultural practices by those utilizing state subsidies in the form of land leases. One being the stick that would ideally be at some point far in the future, by which time all those accessing state land leases would be required to be utilizing conservation agricultural practices to essentially conserve a public resource. But in the meantime, offering a carrot in the form of incentive programs, a variety of which would be ideally housed under this Healthy Soils program, for example, the compost reimbursement programming, cover crop reimbursement efforts, and other types of conservation agricultural practices as yet identified by the Greenhouse Gas Sequestration Task Force. We feel that the work done by that task force will make significant strides to identify the types of practices and potentially even the types of incentives that could be further implemented as part of this program. We're happy to answer any further questions and appreciate the opportunity to testify. Mahalo.
Thank you. Next up is Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. We'll stand on a written testimony in support.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3197. First up, it is Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Trevor Brazil with Chamber of Commerce Hawaii. We stand in support of this bill and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Department of Agriculture on Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on this written testimony offering comments and concerns. We currently don't have the specific structure and resources to support such a farmer apprentice mentoring program. We continue to believe that an entity with workforce development expertise be the lead to facilitate this effort to deliver a successful program. And we would be involved in providing any information that could make this program a success. If this measure were to move forward, we would need to build up the program with staff, and we have identified what the personnel resources might be, and also we would need operating expenses to do so. Thank you very much, and we're available to answer questions.
Thank you. Next up is Hawaii Farmers Union United.
Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Hunter Hevelin, once again here on behalf of Hawaii Farmers Union United. We stand in strong support of this measure and on our written testimony, and view this as a critical mechanism to facilitate agricultural labor training opportunities for local folks across the islands, as well as a mechanism to support agricultural operational viability by enabling any enterprising farm operator who submits a verifiable work training plan to participate in this effort and receive subsidies for hiring apprentices. And we view that as a critical mechanism, and with the HCOA as the entity within the state with the greatest relationship with producers, we view them as a great avenue to help grow and sustain this program over time. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up is Local Food Coalition.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Kendo Matsuyoshi on behalf of the Local Food Coalition. We will stand on our written testimony in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Brian Miyamoto of Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The Hawaii Farm Bill will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the last bill, Senate Bill 2284. First up, it is DONR.
Aloha, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee, Brian Nielsen, Division of Aquatic Resources, representing the department on this measure. We stand on our written comments, appreciating the intent of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony supporting the intent, and we provided comments available to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The Hawaii Farm Bureau will stand on its written testimony supporting the intent.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's recess for decision making. Thank you. Committee on Finance will reconvene for decision-making on our 1:30 agenda. Thank you very much to all the members and audience members, testifiers who are present in person and on Zoom. So first up is Senate Bill 2885, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Senate Bill 2885 SD1 HD1 as is. Chair Luke.
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Representative Bronco. Excused. Eli.
Aye.
Hope.
Aye.
Iligan.
Aye.
Kobayashi. Martin.
Aye.
Ishimoto. Russo.
Aye.
Sayama.
Aye.
Tam.
Aye.
Hodge. Wahlberger.
Aye.
McDermott. Excuse.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2298, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2298 SP2 HD1 as is, noting the excused absence of Representatives Bronco and McDermott, and that will, sorry.
In opposition, please,
Okay.
Chair, since the state doesn't adhere to its own wage and hour laws, I don't think we should pass this bill.
I'm sorry.
No vote, thank you.
Opposition.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, are they, noting the no vote for Representative Wahlberger, are there any other no votes, any reservations? And Representative Hope,
No,
I'm sorry. Bronco and
McDermott.
McDermott will be excused throughout the rest of this agenda. Adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2359, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Take a really close look, last look at it, because this will be, this and few others we're sending out clean. So if that's the case, after we vote on the floor, this might be your last opportunity. So I'm gonna give you a second to take a closer eyeball look at this. If not, if you guys are okay, we will vote, although, don't worry, you still have your chance on the floor. So I'm just giving you warning that this is being passed out clean. Okay, as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2359 SD1 HD1 as is noted. I'm sorry, excuse after McDermott throughout the rest of this agenda and the presence of Representative Bronco. Are there any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2076, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 2. As you know, the federal government provided about $200 million in broadband funding. And in the budget, as you folks know, we also dedicated about $33 million for matching funds for additional broadband expansion. This is a huge opportunity for us to take broadband into the most remote areas and increase broadband for the entire state. The authority presented in this bill is it's not ready to a point where we're not ready to do authority because broadband is still continues to be very complicated. So with the concurrence of the subject matter chairs and the agreement with many of the stakeholders who have been working on this issue, we will be reducing this bill to a working group. So the working group will be facilitated by University of Hawaii, where the funding will go to. So it will be facilitated between the University of Hawaii and the broadband office, which is headed by Mr. Bert Lum. And the working group will include the executive branch, including DBED, DCCA, BNF, DAGS, and the congressional delegation, since they are specifically assisting us with this effort, and representatives from the counties, and of course DHHL, which is also receiving about $60 million to expand broadband in Homestead, in our Homestead areas, also including members of the broadband HUI and private sector partners. And then with a defective date, because we still need to work on some of the other language. Any questions? If not, please take the vote.
ASB 2076, ST2, HD2 with amendments. Are there any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Senate Bill 2567, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Senate Bill 2567, ST1, HD1 as is. Any reservations? Any no's?
No, this is not clean. It's January 1, 2222.
Okay, reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3205, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Senate Bill 3205, SD1, HD1. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2806, Senate Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD1, putting an effective date of July 1, 2022. But with that, it's still not a complete bill because we still need to put in the funding. We just need an HD1 to take it into conference. Any discussion? If not, please take a vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2806, SD1 with amendments. Reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2808, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. This is for the SBIR, Small Business Credit Initiative Program. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2808, SD1, HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2805, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2805, SD2, HD1 as is. Any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3143. This will be passed as is. This is the annual conformity bill. This is where the state conforms or don't conform to the federal IRC. I will give you a second to reflect because this will go up. As soon as we pass this, it's gonna go up. It's not even gonna go to conference because there is no House draft. Are you guys comfortable with passing the annual IRC? Okay, any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3143 as is. Any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Okay, next up is Senate Bill 2303. Again, this is, there is no House draft. This is being passed out clean, passed out as is. This is allowing Department of Taxation a little bit more flexibility. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Senate Bill 2303 as is. Any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Okay, next up is Senate Bill 2599, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2. This will be incorporating Department of Taxation amendments where they're recommending that if the grant is something that they got from the state. So for instance, you cannot use credits and grants that you got from the state as kind of the matching. So it will be a double benefit. So with that, and then blank amount and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2599, SD1, HD1 with amendments. Any reservations or no?
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3054, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3054, SD1, HD1 as is. Any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3201, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3201, SD1, HD1. Any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 172, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. This is allowing certain organization to qualify for a 42F. This one is also being sent out clean, but there are some issues that we can fix up in conference, but it has a HD1. So I want the Senate to take a closer look at this as well. So pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 172, SD1, HD1 as is. Any reservations or no? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3243, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Again, this is being sent clean. This is just increasing the definition of industrial park. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3243 SD1 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3334, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? Representative Kobayashi.
What are the effective dates of the transfers?
Effective date of the transfer is July 1, 2023, but this has an effective date of October 18, 2015.
For both, it's the same effective date.
No, the transfer is July 1, 2023, but the effective date of this act is effective. Okay, any other discussion? Representative Pruso.
I'm concerned about part 4, the transfer of School Facilities Authority to the Department of Economic Development and Tourism. So I think I'm a no on this.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Representative Kobayashi.
My concern about the transfer date is that I think that both organizations should be given one lead time to at least settle current matters and get established before any kind of transfer.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, voting on Senate Bill 3334 SD2 HD1 as is, noting the no vote for Representative Pruso. Any other no's or reservations? Adopted. Reservations for Representative Kobayashi. Any others? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3096, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 2. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? Representative Pruso.
I think I'm going to move it for the reasons I think I expressed in my question.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3096 SD1 HD2 as is. Any reservations? No vote for Representative Pruso. Any others? Okay, adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2989, Senate Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD1 only because it only has an SD1, and so we need to put a HD1 on it. So making the effective date July 1, 2022, and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2989 SD1 with amendments. Any reservations? Those adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3197, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3197 SD2 HD1 as is. Any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2284, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill
Oh, wait,
2284.
hold on just a sec. Representative Pruso.
I share some of the current concerns expressed by DLNR, Department of Ag, and the Farm Bureau, specifically with respect to property rights within cultured progeny of wild stock. So for that reason, I'm going to be voting with reservations.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2284 SD2 HD1 as is. No reservation for Representative Pruso or any other reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for being here. We will be now moving on to Agenda 2, which is our 2:30 agenda. So with that, first up, it is Senate Bill 2021, House Draft 1. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh. Thank you. Senate Bill 2021. First up, it is Director Hirai.
Afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, committee members. I'm Craig Hirai, Director of Finance. You have our written testimony with comments. and my budget administrator. And I are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Na'u Kamali'i. I'm the Chief Advocate for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Also present is our Chair of the Board, Trustee Lindsay, and our CEO, Sylvia Hussey. Thank you very much, Chair, for the opportunity to testify, for giving us a hearing on this measure relating to increasing the payment amount for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Also, mahalo to those legislators who have worked with us through this session to get to this point. We're very grateful for all the opportunity to educate on what is the Public Land Trust. This particular measure, the intent of it, as we started, Office of Hawaiian Affairs initially introduced a measure 2122, which didn't survive. However, parts of that bill were inserted into this bill 2021. The trustee sought to set right its accounting dispute with the state and fulfill its constitutional obligation and trust duties to Native Hawaiians since its inception. We provided in this testimony a history, historical context. As you know, this stems from the overthrow, annexation, and more importantly, the Admissions Act. In the Admissions Act, there establishes a trust responsibility with the state of Hawaii and the United States. And then later in 1980, as we create the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And it's that trust obligation that brings us back every year to fulfill our responsibility to Native Hawaiians. When we looked at the measure that was presented, or that we are looking at today, SB 2021 SD1 HD1, we had some we had some issues with that. Foremost, OHA strongly opposes any amendments to the language of HRS 1013.5. 1013.5 establishes 20% of the income and proceeds to be paid to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Now, in 1980, the state legislature, in creating the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, sorry, it's hard to breathe here, thereafter determined that OHA should receive 20% of the revenue of the PLT, which has been law for about 40 years and codified in that section. The changes to that section and this measure provide that 20% of net receipts from the Public Land Trust, or 15.1 million, whichever is greater, will be OHA's annual share. And we just find that that is just a marked difference from what has always been the 20% share of all income and proceeds. When you look at net receipts, well, after that's been done, it virtually reduces the amount OHA would receive to zero, which leaves us at 15.1 million. And we've been at that figure for about 16 years. So we request that section 2, be deleted in its entirety. And perhaps entertain an interim measure, which would present an interim annual sum of 21.5 million, a modest increase, and that annual sum to be adjusted annually for Consumer Price Index, and that to start this year. Also, the CAFTA account, which is the trust account. Now that has been slowly increasing every year, and it was intended to address shortfalls, but every year there has been overages, and from the period of 2012 to 2022, that has increased to approximately 30 million, and we project it to be about 31 million in the next quarter. So we'd like to have that amount, which represents the overages of the 15.1 million, to be released to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs pursuant to executive order. Also continue the annual accounting. And then, we've been at this for a while with the state. We are here to work this out. We had hoped that this year, as Indigenous peoples and their disagreements with governments have been resolved, that we could earnestly sit at the table in a working group and address this once and for all. It's the matter of how do we define what are receipts? How do we define those income that's received by the various agencies? They all define it differently. Some don't pay us at all. Some are diligent, but I think it deserves us working together to look at each of the agencies, speak to them, understand their concerns, and then try and work something out. Certainly we'll be here next year if the working group is put in place. And we'll be here next year if it's not, because we have a constitutional obligation to the Native Hawaiians to address what is the public land trust, income and revenues. So thank you very much. Apologize. And if you have any questions, we can answer them.
Thank you. Do you want some water?
No, it's more of a breathing, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, it is anyone else that wanted to testify in person before I go to Zoom? Okay, if not, we're gonna go to Zoom, Department of Transportation.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke. This is Eduardo Manglalan, Deputy Director, Harbors Division. We support the intent of the bill. However, we have concerns on the blank dollar transfer of funds and sections 3 and 5 of the bill. We stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is DNR.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Russell Tsuji for DLNR. Chair, we submitted testimony in opposition and want to raise a couple points. Number one, we object to the expansion of the definition of receipts that previously under 5F and HRS 10.3, it's limited to leases or other land dispositions, i.e. leases. It expands it now to include possibly fines for encroachments on state lands or public lands. And let me explain why. If we're going to go that route, it must be based on net receipts. Because when we proceed with an enforcement action against violators of public land laws, oftentimes they will be, almost always, they will be entitled to a contested case. And these contested cases, with the added cost of court reporters and a hearing officer, etc., can run on average from $50,000 to over $200,000. I'll give you an example. In the one largest contested case that the state that I could ever recall was in TMT, and that was $500,000. And so to the extent that OHA will be reaping, benefits from the revenues or fines that are assessed against these violators, it certainly should be after the costs that they incurred by the department, because otherwise it's not fair. It's not fair. I'm here for answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. The department stands on its written testimony, offering comments and concerns. We are paying our 20% and requiring the transfer of a fixed amount that could exceed 20% could put us in a place of hardship. So we're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is it's the Attorney General's office.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, members of the committee, Craig Hood, Deputy Attorney General. The legislature has the sole authority to determine OHA's pro rata share of the income and proceeds from the Public Lands Trust. However, there are other beneficiaries as well as other trust purposes, which should be taken into account when the legislature determines OHA's share. We also offer a technical amendment in our written testimony. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. We have the Mauna Loa Foundation. Present. Okay, anyone else wishing to testify on Zoom? If questions, Representative Todd.
Hi, thank you. I have a brief question for OHA, and then unless someone wants to go after that, I have a couple questions for Mr. Suji.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for being here and for advocacy. So you guys kind of have a general expectation of what proceeds will be coming in for this revenue. And I imagine that that kind of informs your budgeting process, is projecting out what's coming in.
Oh, under the new definition, sir, no, we don't really have a revenue projection on that.
Oh,
We have
sorry,
been paying.
Oh, Mr. Suji, I think he had a question for OHA. That
Oh,
was
I'm
it.
sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, like, well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I would imagine that net proceeds probably fluctuate a great deal when compared to gross proceeds. So I was wondering if you had a perspective on, ignoring the actual dollar figure in mind, would those gross proceeds be more stable and help you budget out properly, or?
Well, first of all, with regard to the expectation, the issue has been that it has been set at 15.1 billion since 2012. And it's been there for 16 years. So we've worked with that figure, and then we've had to literally return the overage to the state. It was intended to address the shortfall. With regard to what we are to receive, 10-3, a pro rata portion of all funds derived from the Public Land Trust shall be funded in amount to be determined by the legislature. And when that happened in 1980, it was set at 20%. Now, each of the agencies may have highs and lows. 20% is what they would essentially act as a conduit and turn that over to the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The reason why it went that route is because otherwise we'd be here every year asking the legislature for an appropriation of that 20%. So they thought, well, instead of doing that, we'll try and set up this relationship between the agencies and OHA so that OHA receives that 20% share. Over time, the agencies define that 20% differently in their house. We have the Department of Agriculture that says we diligently do that. We have some agencies that just have decided, we serve Hawaiians, so we're going to keep OHA's share to meet our operating costs. Others, as we have seen, have decided, since it's been 15.1 for so long, that we're going to give you what we think you need because we only have to meet 15.1. And that particular agency has consistently in the last 4 years provided 10 million, and then last year, 9,999,000. So we see, obviously, there's a conversation that needs to be held. So the issue of gross versus net, I think when you move into net, then you're moving into the operating, the operating issues of the agency. I don't believe that was ever the intent at a constitutional level. There was never an intent for those agencies to cover their expenses, cover their expenditures, and then what was convenient, apply 20%. So that's why that net receipts definition is so offensive.
Okay.
And we'd like to see it removed.
And then I had two other brief questions. So in the DLNR's testimony, I'll just read it kind of verbatim. Basically, they say that OHA's accounting for fiscal year 15 to 16 shows total ceded land revenues for the state at 394 million. But that DLNR, they're saying that basically, or based on reports submitted to the legislature, their number is closer to 178 million. Can you account for the discrepancy between those numbers, or is it just kind of lost in translation somewhere?
Well, I'm not the accounting type, and I think the reason, and that's the reason why we had that report done. We actually, commissioned that report to look at, and DLNR diligently produces a report every year, as they have this past year. But in that year, 2015, 2016, we had an accounting firm review it and advise us as to what we thought, whether it was correct, whether there was some underreporting. And so that's how we came up with that figure.
Okay, and then lastly, very briefly, so in Mr. Suji's testimony, he talks specifically about fines and contested cases. And I think that he makes a pretty reasonable point in that way, but I can't imagine that that dollar figure really extends very far. So on behalf of OHA, I guess, I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you really is that like an important detail, whether it's net for those very specific cases?
Well, that's
versus
why we don't
gross?
like that, we don't like it at all.
Yeah,
Because it delves into areas that perhaps are too minute, address particular ills of a particular agency. And certainly if you have a contested case hearing that's going to drive up your costs, the answer to that is not to take from a constitutional pro rata share, which is due to OHA. The answer to that is come back to the legislature and request appropriation. Now, for the Native Hawaiian beneficiaries, we don't have that option. We don't come here and say, we'd like more appropriations for the Native Hawaiians. Those who are specifically part of that compact between the state and the United States when the lands were transferred. That's not the option. The agencies, however, come here every year. They provide you with their budgets. They tell you what the ills are. They ask you for more money. That's not our path with the Public Land Trust. So first you have to know that the Public Land Trust income and proceeds are a very special category. They don't include sovereign revenue that you can gain, which you do from taxes, et cetera. So that's why we want it removed. Let's go back to what it was and let's figure out how to work with the agencies.
okay, I'm okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Bronco.
Okay, for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, could you tell me the difference between the Healy numbers? Because I noticed in 2019, the numbers were very different than the proposal currently.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So when you folks came in 2019, the figure was significantly much less because it didn't include revenue from the hospitals or public housing. Could you just explain for the body the difference between the two figures with the Healy numbers and without?
Well, maybe it's easier to understand when you look at the different agencies. So for the hospitals, for example, they've always asserted that because they serve Native Hawaiians and they're low income, that all of the money should be retained for that purpose. Now that decision as to how those monies are to be spent, OHA is not subsidizing these hospitals. That decision as to how those 20% is to be spent is determined by the trustees of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. They are not a board of directors. They are elected officials. They are elected officials whose race is a statewide race by all the people of Hawaii. They are imbued with the management decisions. So when you take that 20% and you just keep it, in effect, we're subsidizing the hospitals. And so that's why, we object to that. We want to take a look at that. Granted, the hospitals need to be supported, but the way in which they're supported is to come to the legislature and ask for more fundings through the appropriation vehicle.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, Representative Holt?
Thank you. For DLNR, please. So in your testimony, you said that gross receipts from ceded lands in 15-16 was 177 million. Do you have a current number?
Not off the top of my head. It's in the report. We submitted a report this year.
Okay.
It should be in our public land trust report. We submit it annually.
Okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
Just to know that 20% of 177 million is 35 million.
That number that you're referring to though is there's the 15.1 and then there's a total gross receipts from ceded land revenues. And then if you take 20%, then roughly you get a number.
Yes.
So
Thank you,
yeah,
sir.
I don't have the current one in front of me, but it
Okay.
is a report that we submitted.
Thank you. Well, I just like to note that it's 20% of the 15-16 numbers equal $35 million. It's $20 million more than the 15 million. And it is up to the legislature to make that number. I just feel like adding these clauses to this measure really muddies the water more than we need to. And it's really just up to us to decide how much OHA these receives. And I think it's pretty clear that it's a lot more than 15 million. Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Kobayashi.
Is University of Hawaii here?
Not on this.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
For DLNR,
Yes,
what
sir.
is the fluctuation that you expect if net receipts were used year after year going forward. Is net receipts for you a stable number? Does it?
I think generally it may be, I think it is for leasing purposes. We incur, you'll see a spike in certain years because, for example, we incurred a cost of appraisal of reopening a lease, not every year, but usually once every 10 years. And so you'll see a spike. However, it does even out because we have 1,000 leases and they all come due at different times. And so I think you will not see a spike. You will see a spike when it is those cases that we actually have to fight, go file an enforcement action for violations of public land laws. And actually, we have counsel, the opposing party has counsel, we have a hearing officer, a lawyer, everybody's charging $400 an hour. It does add up. Plus you have the cost of the court reporter and travel sometimes if we're going to travel. And so it can add up. In those cases, there'll be a spike if we were to allow net. But what I'm trying to say is that if we recover, it should be after costs, because costs can be very substantial in those situations. I hope I answered your question adequately. So, yeah.
Yeah, I asked for-
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The public lands include a very large category, including important agricultural lands. Well, I shouldn't say, including agricultural lands, including hospitals, including education. How would you assist these organizations in staying alive if you if you got 20% of all funds derived? Does that mean that you would get 20% of all patient revenue from hospitals? All 20% of all tuition fees paid to the University of Hawaii?
I think that when you look at the public lands, again, although I didn't want to go back into history, but you have to go back into history. The public land trust, or the ceded lands origin, were the government and crown lands of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And then they became the lands of the United States of America. And at the time when the Admissions Act was established, there was a compact. And in the compact, those lands were transferred to the state of Hawaii. And there were 5 purposes established in that trust. One of the 5 purposes, Section 5F, is for the betterment of the conditions of the Native Hawaiians. And in establishing that, in the statute itself, it does state what that is. I apologize, I don't have that before me. But in establishing that, there were issues before the Office of Hawaiian Affairs was brought into being. And that's why the Office of Hawaiian Affairs was created, because at that point, no monies were going for the betterment of the condition of Native Hawaiians. So OHA gets established, and the legislature has the same question you are dealing with today. And they solve it.
I'm sorry.
They have the
My
same question
was-
that you have today, and that is embodied in 10.13.5. They resolved it by saying 20% of all income and proceeds. That's how they resolved it. Now, how it's operationalized, that's what we're talking about. What the pro rata share is, it's been law for over 40 years. Until today, you try to change it to net. So now you've got history, case law, and a definition that now everybody's trying to understand.
Wait,
so
I was
we
here
would like
40
to have
years
that.
ago when we did this.
So we would like to have that whole section regarding net changed. What we would like to do is sit down with the agencies, as you are suggesting, to understand the hospitals issue, understand the University of Hawaii that makes millions on Mauna Kea. 20% of $1, we don't have an accounting for that. But when you hear the Mauna Kea testimony, you'll hear millions of dollars as that expands and grows. What's the 20% of that? We need to sit down and talk about it. That's why
So,
we want a
excuse
working
me,
group.
Excuse me. Thank you for the history.
So that's the answer to the question.
To
delve into the minutia of the question that you are asking, it doesn't stand separate from the history. We are all trustees. All of you are trustees. OHAs are trustees, to whom, with regard to the Public Land Trust, there are two trusts, the 80% and the 20%, the two of them. We're all trustees. I'm not even in the Native Hawaiian category because I don't have 50% Hawaiian blood, but I will fight for their right. I will be here to fight for that, to ensure that we do our job to the people who aren't in the room, the Native Hawaiians. That's what OHA is charged to do. And they've been sued if they don't do a good job. And we've tried to hold the state accountable, but the lawsuits bring us right back here to have this discussion. It's very awkward to have that detailed discussion, Representative Kobayashi, and you have been a representative for many years. And I thank you for your service. But this problem has been here for many years. We have to sit down. That's what we're proposing.
You need to sit down. May I ask you a simple question? You are proposing that for the interim, you receive a sum that is adjusted annually per consumer price index.
Yes.
What consumer price index did you use to derive $21.5 million?
I believe the Director of Budget and Finance gave us that number where we sat with the Senate leadership. That's how we arrived at it, and we concurred. And that's an interim measure. So
there's several consumer price indexes.
I'm sorry, that's how I understand we arrived at it. There was a concurrence with our CEO and our CFO and Budget and Finance. And
no,
certainly it's,
if you don't
your
know
purview.
which consumer price index,
Yeah,
that's
all right.
irrelevant to it. Yeah. I mean, the point here is that there are several consumer price indexes. Normally, the biggest factor in a consumer price index is housing, that is rent or ownership. So depending on which consumer price index you have a greater or lesser increase.
I apologize, I don't know that detail.
Thank you.
You know, that number is intended to be interim, not in place for another 10 years. It's intended to be there so that we could get a modest increase and serve the Native Hawaiians while we sit at the table and figure this out. But I don't know the detail to that.
Okay, Representative Russo.
I have a quick question for OHA, and this, I'm not sure if you can answer it, but it became clear over the course of our investigatory committee over the interim with SLDF and ADC, that ADC for 30 years had not paid in to the pro rata, they had not made their pro rata contribution, although they control thousands of acres of ceded lands on Kauai. And I wonder, as we're having this discussion, who then makes that right? It shouldn't fall upon you to go back and look at their revenue from the past, and I'm talking about gross revenue, but whose responsibility does that become?
I would say it's our collective responsibility. There are two parts. There's another part to this question is, what is the inventory of the ceded lands themselves? That also needs to be clarified. But when you look at the question that you're talking about, applying the formula, being able to sit down with the agency to be able to determine, whether there is income coming in and whether the pro rata share is paid. It's the same thing with every agency. And if an agency is receiving money and we don't receive a pro rata share, we kind of have a question about that. Well, we have the same questions.
All right, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Martin.
Also for OHA, thank you. I'm just wondering, this was a bill that originally you folks supported, and then as it was amended, your testimony is rated as comments, but clearly you don't support it in the current version. I'm wondering if it's not amended in the way that you folks had asked for, does this make you worse off than you are now?
Absolutely.
So this is something
Again,
that
the focus of the, do you oppose it wholesale? Well, we want the increase. Do we support it? Well, there's a dangerous section here, and that's section 2. It puts about a definition of receipts. Even DLNR has an issue trying to figure out what that means. And it also changes what has historically been in place for over 40 years, i.e. 10.13.5, the 20% section. So how do you speak to that? And I would say our Native Hawaiian people have an issue with how do we speak to that? We have one that we vehemently oppose to, yet we have other sections which look sort of normal, particularly the CAFTA section. Now, we do want to receive the CAFTA money, so we support that, but we absolutely do not want to have any changes to 10.13.5. Those overages are sitting in account. Neither the state nor OHA can use them. It doesn't make sense. But if it's derived from the 20% over the 10 years, it does make sense that it comes to OHA. So we've made that request. So in part, we are strongly opposed, and in part, we support. So I think the trustees came up with comment and then speak to every aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Pope.
Thank you for DLNR, please. Thanks.
Yes.
I've asked you this question before. A couple years ago, an audit came out, and your response, because as the land division manager, you're responsible for maximizing revenues on ceded lands. And I believe your response was you don't have a plan because administration's changed, so why make a plan? So do we have a plan now to maximize revenues for ceded lands?
Well, first of all, if I may respond to the maximized revenues versus generating revenues. Under our statute, it is based on fair market rent, fair market value. So I think there's a distinction there because, but secondly, as far as a strategic management plan, we are in the process of working on one. Yes. It's not complete yet, but we are working on one.
Do you have an estimated time of when that'll be done?
I don't, sir, but it is underway as we speak.
Okay, well, I just find it really important.
Yeah, it came out in the investigative report. I think we had started it. And we're in the process of doing it. We're still in it, yes.
Well, thank you for doing that. And, it's pretty important as, I did take a little bit of offense to your comment earlier that it's not fair, because it's not fair to Hawaiians that we're not getting our 20%. It's been a long time. And for you to say that it's not fair to the department, and for the Department of Ag to say it puts them in a difficult position, Hawaiians have been in a difficult position, and it's not fair to them. So I hope we can make some progress on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 1121. First up, it is Department of Taxation.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments.
Thank you. Next up, it is DHHL.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, members of the committee. We stand in strong support of this bill that exempts general excise taxes for DHHL and developments under DHHL. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, it is Tax Foundation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. We will stand on our written comments, be available for questions.
Thank you. Any other testifier in person or on Zoom? DNF, go ahead.
Chair Luke, Vice Chair Machida, committee members, I'm Craig Rai, Director of Finance. We submitted written testimony only, but I think I need to say something about this.
Okay, go ahead.
When I was HHFDC Executive Director, we administered an exemption for affordable housing. And there were issues with DHHL. They had a hard time working within that statute, which is, I believe, the reason for this statute. But there's a couple, you have our written testimony. There's a couple of things that I'd like to comment on. I think it should be limited to projects on homestead land and DHHL land, so as not to create a conflict with 23729. And 23729C requires rules. In 23729C, it's rules between HHFDC and Department of Tax. In this case, it would be DHHL and Department of Tax. And also, whenever you have a GET exemption, you should have a related use tax exemption. In this case, with 23729, it's 238-3. So I think those are more or less technical comments. I think it's fine.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Thank you. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2623. First up, it is DHHL.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. The department submits comments on this bill, and we stand ready for any questions.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifiers. Anyone wishing to testify in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3357. First up, it is Tabith.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Dennis Ling for DBED. DBED stands on its testimony offering comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is DLNR Shipley.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Alan Downer, Administrator of the State Historic Preservation Division. The department stands on its written testimony. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, it's Department of Agriculture.
Thank you, Chair. The department stands on its written testimony. We appreciate the intent of the measure, and we offer comments limited to the portions that relate to our department. You know, we know that we lack the expertise in assessing Native Hawaiians' needs and practices, and that the requisite identification and selection process will need additional substantial effort and staffing resources to administer the program effectively and appropriately. We respectfully recommend that the Department of Hawaiian Homelands, the Office of Hawaiian Affairs, and the Council of Native Hawaiian Advancement be the lead agencies for the measure in assessing the Native Hawaiian needs and practices and determining appropriate funding levels. You know, we together with the University of Hawaii CTAR can serve as consultants for agricultural projects or agriculture subject matter expertise. Thank you. And we're available to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is CNHA.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sterling Wong for CNHA. We stand on our written testimony and support. Happy to answer any questions. Mahalo nui.
Thank you. Any other testifier in person or on Zoom? If not, questions, Representative Kobayashi.
I'm wondering if somebody is here to answer a legal question. If the grants are to be awarded in conformity to Chapter 42F-103, is this bill a circumvention of that chapter? Because that chapter also specifies that applications for grants shall be submitted to the appropriate standing committees of the legislature.
I think that's an appropriate question for the Attorney General's office.
I'm not sure. Then
Yeah.
somebody look at that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3046. First up, it is the Attorney General's office.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke and members of the committee. I'm John Price from the Attorney General's office. We find ourselves embroiled in some very expensive looking litigation. And as laid out in our testimony, we're asking for some supplemental funds to see us through that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not questions, members, the Attorney General's office is asking for $4 million as opposed to the initial $1 million as the cost of some litigation has grown. Okay, so let's move on to the next bill. Senate Bill 3041, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. This is the claims against the state. First up is the Attorney General's office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, Karen Inagaki, Deputy Attorney General. Yes, this is the appropriations bill. The current version contains 11 claims, and those are described in our testimony as Attachment A. Since the bill was last amended, we have 6 new claims, and those are described in our Attachment B to our testimony. So including the 6 new claims, the appropriation request is allocated among 17 claims, $2,152,999.69. We ask that this bill be passed, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is DLNR.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Brian Nielsen, Division of Aquatic Resources. The department stands on its written testimony, providing comments on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Department of Education, Mr. Hallett.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, committee members, Brian Hallett, DOE CFO, on behalf of Interim Superintendent Keith Hayashi. The department offers testimony in support of Senate Bill 3041 HD1 with concerns regarding Section 5. This Section 5 has 125,000 judgments stemming from a 2003 incident at a charter school, Connections Charter School, involving a janitor who was not maintained. Our concerns is that the department is being held responsible for a charter school incident in the House Draft 1. And we would ask that the change be made to either have this come straight from general funds through the Attorney General's office, or if absolutely necessary, from the Charter School Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? Okay, I have a question for the Deputy Attorney General. Ms. Inagaki?
Yes.
Without telling us the detail of any potential settlement, do you anticipate between now and at the end of session additional claims?
I would say that it is certainly possible. I am not aware right now of any claims that will be resolved by the time the legislature is in session, but I cannot guarantee that because, you know, this is sort of the time when a lot of people do want to settle it because they realize that they're running out of time. So, but right now I am not aware of any.
Okay, I'm just trying to think whether I should clean it up or wait for conference. Perhaps the best thing to do is wait for conference to clean it up. Thank you very much for your answer. Okay, next up it is Senate Bill 3044, Attorney General's office.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, members of the committee. I'm Rich Stacy from the Attorney General. We're in strong support of this bill. This committee previously heard the companion bill, HB 2076, which is set for decision making tomorrow on the Senate side. The short version is this would give us a very useful tool to take money that tobacco manufacturers want to either give us or that is abandoned in escrow accounts. It stems from the master settlement agreement. About 10 states have these statutes. California has received several $100,000s in funds this way, and we believe it would be a very useful tool for us. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 1048, Attorney General's Office.
Good morning, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. My name is Christopher Young. I am the administrator of the Hawaii Criminal Justice Data Center, Department of the Attorney General. We are in support of this bill, and I will stand up my testimony. The only comment I had was at our last hearing with Judiciary, they were not clear on what Hawaii Criminal Justice Data Center does to put this bill into context. And I would leave it to your discretion if you would like me to provide a very short explanation. If not, we'll stand on our testimony and be available for questions.
Thank you very much. That's, let me see. That's all the testifier we have signed up. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions, members? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2390. Judge Kinoza.
Chair Luke and Vice Chair Yamashita and members of the committee. Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Ginoza. I'm the Chief Judge of the Intermediate Court of Appeals. And on behalf of the judiciary, we strongly support this bill. Very much appreciate that the bill is being heard to add one other judge to the ICA and to have support staff for chambers for that judge. You know, it's laid out in our testimony, the challenges that the ICA has with its significant caseload. So that, you know, the ICA came into existence because of the 1978 Constitutional Convention, started operating in 1980 with 3 judges. Over the course of the, next 20 years or so, 3 more judges were added. But that was in 2004 was the last time we had a judge added to the ICA. So that's 18 years ago. 2 years after that, the restructuring of the appellate system occurred in Hawaii in 2006. And it's a good restructuring where now all of the appeals most of the appeals all come through the ICA. There's a few that go directly up to the Supreme Court, but the ICA is where the vast majority of appeals start and end. And I've laid out the numbers in my testimony. You know, since restructuring, there have been over 8,000 appeals at the ICA, and we've resolved the vast majority of them. But there is a historic backlog of appeals, and in large part, it's because of that restructuring. There was some that were already pending in the ICA. Other appeals got transferred to the ICA because of that restructuring. And then since the restructuring, in those 15 years since, you know, there's a small percentage of additional backlog. In order to really have a chance of getting at that backlog, we do need another judge and the support staff. So we would request that the appropriations in the SD1 version of the bill be strongly considered by the committee. And we appreciate so much that this bill is being heard. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Next up, it's on Zoom, Office of Public Defender.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm James Tabith with the Office of the Public Defender. The office will be standing on our written testimony and support, and I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon. Deputy Attorney General Randall Nishiyama for the Department of the Attorney General. We have submitted our written comments in support of this bill, and I am available to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2740, Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department will stand on its written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is the Judiciary.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke. This is Vice Chair Yamashita and members of the committee. My name is Matt Viola. I'm the Senior Family Court Judge in the First Judicial Circuit. I stand on our written testimony in strong support, and I'm here to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2114. First up, it is the Department of Education.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Dr. Yvonne Hummel from Office of Student Support Services, testifying on behalf of the Hawaii State Department of Education. The department stands on its testimony and supports this measure. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone from the judiciary? Yes, come on up. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jasmine Mamkai, I'm the Director of the Children's Justice Center. On behalf of the State Judiciary, we stand in strong support of SB 2114 and stand on our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up is Attorney General's Office.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Deputy Attorney General and State Human Trafficking Coordinator Fashad Talebi. The department strongly supports this bill. We think it would be valuable to expand the purpose in the statute. And we just respectfully ask the committee to pass the bill, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Honolulu Police Department.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Major Brandon Nakasato. The department stands on its written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department stand on written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2136, House Draft 1. First up, it is the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair. Trouble with this. Michael Gloy Jr. on behalf of the Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii, we stand in full support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? It is 2136. Okay, if not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2663, relating to filing fees. First up, actually, no one signed up to testify. Anyone here to testify for 2663? Either on Zoom or in person. If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 416. First up, it is Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. This is part of our legislative package, so I appreciate the committee hearing this bill. I will be here for any questions that you might have, but I stand on our written testimony and support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Office of Public Defender on Zoom.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, James Tabith with the Office of the Public Defender. We stand on our written testimony and we are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? Not questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3114. First up, it's Department of Health.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lauren Kim. I'm the Policy and Planning Officer for the department, but I'm also the Acting State Registrar, the office which oversees the issuance of marriage licenses and licenses for officiants. I've laid out our rationale. Thank you for hearing this bill. I've laid out our rationale about why this is important, part of which is to avoid a lawsuit. The other part is to increase resources for our marriage license office, who derive no revenue from any of the funds and fees that they collect. But a bit of information that was not in our testimony I'd like to share with you is what our estimated revenue is going to be. So we expect about 700 marriage officiants to apply and receive their license, and that will total about $15,000 to $17,000. As drafted, it would go in the Vital Records Special Improvement Fund, which we dip into to upgrade our computer systems, buy paper, stamps, all that sort of thing, just to run the office. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'll be standing by for questions.
Thank you very much. That's all the testifier. Anyone wishing to testify in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2162. First up, it is Common Cause. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Sandy Ma for Common Cause. Thank you so much, Chair, for hearing this bill. Common Cause greatly supports SB 2162, ranked choice voting. And I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you very much for hearing this bill. Thank you very much. Next up it is Mr. Barthene.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair and members. It's good to be back in the building.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back.
I'm here testifying as an individual in strong support of this bill. You have my testimony in front of you. I've read the committee reports and I'm not sure if there are any problems or challenges facing this bill, but I am available to answer questions. I was the person who was chosen by the state Democratic Party to make our case to the Democratic National Committee to seek authorization to use ranked choice voting. We were the first state party that received that approval, and it was followed by several others. So I am very cognizant of what this meant for our practices, our purpose. I think I saw in testimony, someone was criticizing, they thought this was a weak implementation of ranked choice voting. I would disagree. I would characterize it as a narrowly tailored approach and very prudent for those specific types of elections that do not have the benefit of having a two-round election with a primary that winnows the number of candidates down and then has a runoff. But instead it achieves this through the mechanism of instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting mechanism, so that voters do have the final say, and it does prevent a freakish kind of occurrence where a candidate gets by with victory with a very tiny plurality. So I urge you to pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is Benjamin Riley here? Is Benjamin Riley on Zoom? If not, we have Stonewall Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Michael Galoyu Jr. again on behalf of the Stonewall Caucus. We stand in full support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2741. We have Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Stella Kam of the Department of the Attorney General. The department is in strong support of this bill for the reasons stated in our written testimony, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Blake Oshiro.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Blake Oshiro here in my individual capacity as a member of the commission. I've submitted my written testimony in strong support, and I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 3189. First up, it is the Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department stands on its written testimony and support. Also has suggested amendments in our testimony. We'll be here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it's Office of the Public Defender.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Assistant Public Defender Lee Hayakawa. The Office of the Public Defender has submitted comments on SB 3189 SD2 HD1. We believe that there are issues in the gambling portion of Chapter 712 that should be corrected and or clarified before the offenses of promoting gambling in the first degree and in the second degree are elevated to Class B and Class C felonies respectively. I will stand on my written testimony and will be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, it is ACLU.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Carrie Ann Chase on behalf of the ACL of Hawaii. We oppose this measure because it goes against the grain of evidence-based practices, smart justice policies that focus on creating policies that are supported by evidence. And in the case of this particular bill, first of all, we believe it's unnecessary. There has been no evidence proffered by proponents of this bill suggesting that gambling is at such a level that it requires more punitive sanctions. Looking at some of the data, the statistical reports from judiciary in 2022 to 2021, which we outlined in our testimony, show that there were a total of 49 persons who were sentenced to gambling through all circuits in Hawaii. There's a reference to media reports. We should not be using media reports and sensational headlines to drive public policies. We also suggest that you consider the implications of enhanced sentencing, criminal consequences long beyond someone's conviction. Once somebody has convicted of any type of criminal offense, it typically stays on their record, which then creates barriers to housing, employment, a whole host of other things that people require to be contributing members of our community. And just last in general, we ask that you as lawmakers really consider, some states have moved towards creating independent analysis of potential impact of criminalization legislation, where they look at the implications of any proposed bill to enhance sentencing, whether it's longer terms, changing it from a misdemeanor to a felony, removing a offense from being dank or deferrable, and ultimately racial impacts, which we know that concretely all evidence has showed decade after decade that there are racial implications and disparities against Native Hawaiians. We ask that you defer this measure. It is not necessary and it is punitive and it has not shown to be proven to enhance public safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2373. We have the prosecuting attorney's office.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. Department stands on its written testimony and support. We'll here for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Trevor Arbuzzo with the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii. We stand in strong support of this bill. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Next up is Kat Brady.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, Kat Brady testifying on behalf of Community Alliance on Prisons. I'm just overjoyed that we're on the same page as the prosecutor. Okay, this is a really important bill. People are being released from prison with no money, no ID. They end up on the street. And if they're not immediately homeless, they probably will become homeless. So this bill really looks at the range of things that they need to become contributing members of our community. And I ask you to pass it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up it is, let's go on Zoom, Office of the Public Defender.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. James Tabith with the Office of the Public Defender. We stand on a written testimony in support, and we are here for any questions if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members. Scott Morishige, Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness and Chair of the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness. I'll stand on my written testimony offering comments and note the need for housing subsidies and landlord incentives, as well as the importance of providing pre-release services. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Next up, it is the Department of Human Services.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. Joseph Campos, Deputy Director for Department of Human Services, here on behalf of Director Betts. The Department of Human Services stands on its written testimony, appreciating the intent of the measure, deferring to the Department of Public Safety, and offering comments and clarification. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2185. First up, it is the, we just have individuals on Zoom, Hawaii State Fire Council.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members, Wayne Masuda on behalf of the State Fire Council. State Fire Council is made up of the fire chiefs from the 4 different counties. We've submitted written testimony and it's in strong support of SB 2185. Open for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill Senate Bill 3077. First up, it is the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology.
Good afternoon, Chair Luke, Vice Chair Yamashita, and members of the committee. Jenny Yam, Executive Officer of the Board of Barbering and Cosmetology. Thank you for hearing the department's administration bill. The board will stand on its written testimony and strong support. We offer comments. The board respectfully requests the committee to consider amendment to the definition of beauty instructor for consistency purposes as written in my testimony. This bill will repeal chapters 438 and 439 to create a new chapter in order to align the regulatory structures, correct the inconsistencies between those chapters, and address evolving industry concerns and needs. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any other testifier, either in person or on Zoom? If not, questions? If not, let's move on to the last bill, Senate Bill 2695. First up, it is the Prosecuting Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Mark Tom for the department. I apologize for the late testimony. When reviewing this bill, it appears that the task force, it's unclear if it's going to address some possible proposed legislation regarding criminal matters as it relates to cryptocurrency or blockchain. And based on that, if it does intend to possibly bleed into some criminal matters or how it might relate to criminal statutes, the department would just suggest adding a member or a representative from our department onto the task force, just in the case that proposed legislation is addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, it is Katie Jackson. Okay, if not, we have DCCA. Last call for Ms. Ikeda. If not, anyone else wishing to testify either in person or on Zoom? If not, let's recess for decision making. Good afternoon, Committee on Finance will reconvene for decision-making on our 2:30 agenda. So first up, it is Senate Bill 2021, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. The recommendation is to pass as a HT2. So these are some of the amendments. We will be deleting section 2, which deals with any of changing it from gross receipt to net receipt. The other thing is the $15.1 million has been statutorily set based on prior agreement, but this has always been an interim amount and the legislature recognizes that. So we will be inserting, instead of 15.1, inserting $21.5 million as an interim amount. We will not be putting the CPI because there's some questions about what CPI indexes. In addition to that, this bill will transfer whatever the balance of currently in CAFTA to Office of Hawaiian Affairs as of June 30th, 2022. So it's approximately $31 million. We will be establishing a working group, the composition of which would be as suggested by Office of Hawaiian Affairs, 3 members appointed by the governor and 3 members appointed by OHA to determine future of PLT. The intent, although not in the bill, we will put in the conference report that the intent is to insert an amount into CAFTA in the interim, because we would like the discussion of what the back amount owed to OHA is from the date of the last settlement to present. So we will be inserting that amount into the CAFTA so that the working group can also make a determination of what at least, so it would be in the form of, we're treating it almost as an escrow account so that the group can determine what the backup pay amount would be. And then effective upon approval. Any discussion? Representative Caruso.
Quick question. So will that working group be able to deal with the question I raised about ABC not paying for 30 years?
I think the working group will determine what the future annual amount would be.
So it won't be able to deal with past issues?
It can deal with any of the account of proceeds, ceded land proceeds, or income derived. So it will determine those things. Representative Kobayashi.
When you said the working group will determine, they will recommend to the legislature and the
Right, and the legislature will take that into account.
retain the authority to set the appropriate.
Correct, only because it's still statutorily set. Correct. Representative Holt.
I just want to thank the chair very much for moving this measure along with the proposed amendments. I think it was unfortunate we had the net proceeds portion in there. And I look forward to getting to an equitable 20%, but 21.5 is a great first start. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. And this had the concurrence of the Judiciary and Hawaiian Affairs Chair. Okay, any other discussion? Representative Kobayashi.
Could you give us the breakdown of the working group again?
So
3 and 3?
yeah, 3 and 3. Okay, any other discussion? Representative Martin.
Just wanted to say thank you for making it easy to vote on this.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2021 SB1 HD1 with amendments, Chair. Chair Luke.
Oh, just a minute.
Yes.
And then other technical and non-substantive changes, just in case, I forget like a comma or something. Okay, with that, go ahead. Aye.
Okay, Vice Chair votes aye. Representative Bronco, excuse Eli.
Aye.
Holt. Aye. Iligan.
Aye.
Kobayashi. Aye. Martin.
Aye.
Nishimoto. Russo.
Aye.
Sayama.
Aye.
Tam.
Aye.
Todd.
Aye.
Wahlberger.
Aye.
McDermott, excuse, adopted.
Thank you very much. Next up, Senate Bill 1121, Senate Draft 2. DHHL had requested that I insert language from a Senate bill. I don't have concurrence from the Judiciary Committee, so can we defer this till tomorrow end of calendar, so that I could have a discussion with the Judiciary Chair, including some of the things that brought up by BNF Director. So with that, let's move on to the next bill, Senate Bill 2623, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote. Yes.
I can appreciate the intention of the introducer, and I think she means well. But there are some concerns that there's going to be some unintended consequences as far as I represent a large Native Hawaiian homelands population, and most times unless these transfer their leases, it's because someone lost their job, someone got sick, something happened in the family where they cannot make payment. So for those reasons, I'm going to be voting no.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Representative Russo.
Same request.
Thank you very much. Representative Tam.
Same request.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, members voting on Senate Bill 2623 SD2 HD1 with amendments, noting the no votes for Representatives Eli, Peruso, and Tam. Are there any other reservations or no's?
Reservations, please.
Reservations, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Martin.
Okay, Martin, reservations for Representative Martin. Any others? Okay, noting the excused absence of Representative Bronco and McDermott, and that will be throughout the rest of this agenda. Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3357, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, blanking out the amount and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3357 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3046, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. This is the emergency appropriation for the Attorney General's office, passing as a HD2, inserting the $4 million amount upon approval and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? Not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3046 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3041, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Because there may be additional claims at the end of, while we're in conference, I don't want to give additional work to the drafting agency. So this will be passed as is, but just as a side note, I will be converting all the claims to general funds so that the departments don't pay for it. We had a situation before where charter school had to pay their own, and sometimes charter schools, they don't have enough money to pay it out of their per pupil. So with that, recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? Not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3041 SD2 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Okay, next up is Senate Bill 3044, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. This is Attorney General's package. This will be passed as is, and this is clean. So if you could just, if I could just give you a moment to take a look, but you will have an opportunity to relook at it on the floor. So this one will be as is. So with that, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3044 SD1 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Okay, next up is Senate Bill 1048, Senate Draft 1. This is relating to the Criminal Justice Data Center. Again, if we pass as is, this potentially could go straight up to the governor. So I wanted to at least give you notice that we are passing without HD1, and this is clean. So pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 1048 SD1. Are there any reservations? Oh, I'm sorry, as is. Are there any reservations or no?
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2390, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2390 SD2 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2740, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2740 SD1 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Okay, next up is Senate Bill 2114. Again, this will be passed as is. This will also go up to the governor if on the floor the House passes it over. This is pretty much a housekeeping changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2114 as is. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2136, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2136 HD1 as is. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Senate Bill 2663, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HT2, defecting the date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2663 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you very much. Next up is Senate Bill 416, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as a HD2, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Senate Bill 416 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3114, Senate Draft 2. Recommendation is to put a House Draft 1, defecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3114 SD2 with amendments. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2162, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2162 SD1 HD1. That's it.
As is.
As is. Are there any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2741. Recommendation is to pass as is. This is a uniform law. This again will go up to the, enroll to the governor if it's passed on the floor. So if you will take a special interest in that. If any discussion, if not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2741 as is. Any reservations? Noes? Adopted.
Okay, next up is Senate Bill 3189, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as effecting the effective date and technical non-substantive changes. Any discussion? Yes.
I'll be voting no on this. Gambling rooms are a real problem in my community, but I don't think that further criminalization of gambling is the answer.
Thank you. Any other discussion? If not, it Representative Kobayashi.
I think the public defender has a good point that we should discriminate between the participant and the organizer or the house. So maybe more careful attention to what is called advancing gambling as opposed to participating.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Representative Martin?
I guess we were all struck by testimony. I actually was struck by HPD that wanted to lower the offense to negligence to get higher up organizers rather than the people that were running the show in person. So I'm hoping, I don't know if in conference committee, there might be opportunity for amendments.
Yeah. Thank you. Representative Todd.
Let's go reservations. I think generally I'm kind of opposed to all of these sorts of bills. It doesn't seem like something we should be doing while our prisons are extremely overcrowded. So that's my take on it, reservations.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3189 SD2 HD1 with amendments, noting the reservation for Representative Todd and the no vote for Representative Cruz. So are there any other no's or reservations? Yes. Reservations for Representative Kobayashi. Any others? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2373, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2373 SD1 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 2185, Senate Draft 3, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Voting on Senate Bill 2185 SD3 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Next up is Senate Bill 3077, Senate Draft 1, Senate Draft 1, House Draft 2. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, yes, Representative.
I think BCCA had some.
Yeah, I don't have, I gotta chase CPC and judicial. Okay. Yeah. Okay, any other discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 3077 SD1 HD2.
So
Oh, as is.
as is, are there any reservations or no's? Adopted.
Thank you. Lastly, Senate Bill 2695, Senate Draft 2, House Draft 1. Recommendation is to pass as is. Any discussion? If not, please take the vote.
Okay, Senate Bill 2695 SB2 HD1 as is. Any reservations? No's? Adopted.
Thank you. Hearing is adjourned.